Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today I welcome a special guest. It's our boy, Lukas, from the band Infinite Singularity. How you doing today, brother?
Doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. It's that time of the year when it's cold, but it's actually in the 40s right now, so I mean, can't really complain too much. So that's
Oh
good.
yeah, we're getting half a foot of snow up here in northern Minnesota right now. So
Yeah, you northern folk, you love that snow,
oh yeah,
especially right in the middle there too, because you're actually not too far from Winnipeg, which seems to be like the equivalent of Siberia in this case.
yeah. I think that's the closest big city to me, other than Fargo.
Not really. I guess I know they did the black comedy series on Fargo there too. Are they shoving people into meat grinders or something, or wood chippers, whatever it is?
Oh man, yeah. I think we live in a different part of the world. I love it up here though. I love being out here in the woods.
That's good to hear. So I guess how you been recently? What's new?
Oh well, um, it's been really great to get the momentum, get the ball rolling again musically. I picked this project back up in 2022 after a really long hiatus, and finally got a brand new album out, Hallowed, in October, and that's been going pretty well. It's been pretty well received. Really grateful at how well received it's been. So it's been a great journey so far, coming back into it after a long break.
I guess did you have some sort of personal struggles? Was something going on in your life and caused you to back away from it and pick it up like so many years later?
Well, um, Infinite Singularity really began in 2000. First album was 2002. I kind of shelved this project because it was a solo project. It was something I did as sort of a passion project, and I went out as a singer-songwriter. I played in a band. I was a busker for a while. I did some other things. Yeah, I'd say it would be fair to say I did have to step away for a while back in 2012. I did have some personal struggles that I had to clean up my act a little bit, and I never really got back into it in the way that I was into it before. As far as music goes, I want to do it more on my own terms, so I don't end up back in a bad place again. Honestly.
Yeah, that's what everybody else would say too. So, but good to see our getting back in this project here, bud. So good to hear.
Yeah.
So, we get to talk more about that in just a little bit here too, Luke. But in the meantime, Lukas, welcome to my podcast right here. And the way it's going to work is just ask you some questions. Let's get to know the man behind the music here too, as well as who you are as an individual as well here too. So, you ready?
Yeah, all set.
All right. So, starting at the beginning right here too. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, and how did you become a musician?
So my name is Lukas. I do currently I literally live in a shed in the Northwoods of Minnesota. I know I joke about that sometimes, but that's really where I am. A little bit north of a town called Bemidji, which some people may have heard of. So kind of out here in the woods. I like it a lot up here. I did, as I said, got back into music in 2022 after a long break. I don't know that I ever set it down though. I think music has just always been a part of who I am. I didn't come from a music family or a music background or anything like that. I remember as a kid, we didn't have much money. We lived in Texas. We had this little farm in the backyard. I spent a lot of time digging in the dirt and growing crops and things like that. And I remember I had this little plastic Casio keyboard I think I got it when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I used to sit on the back porch after the work was done and play along and serenade the wild animals. And I think there's always this kind of connection between music and the natural world that always just seemed kind of intuitive to me as far as inspiration. So I don't know that I've ever not played. Even when I set it down for a while, I was still writing music. I was still recording music. I just wasn't doing anything public facing for a long time there.
Actually, when you said serenade the animals, I was thinking, was he maybe playing a flute and they were just all following him around wherever you're going? So,
I think they ran away from me. I didn't really know what I was doing back then.
hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. So, that's pretty cool. I guess, when'd you move to Minnesota? I mean, I guess, why did you move to Minnesota? Just want to get away from the South or something?
Yeah, partly it was work, looking for work. A lot of it was really this is where I wanted to be. I was born just outside of Milwaukee, so in many ways, coming back up here to the Great Lakes region is kind of a homecoming for me, and it's something I always kind of wanted to do. I finally got to do it in 2019, so.
I guess when did you start picking up? I guess you're doing guitar. You're pretty much a one-man band, aren't you?
Yeah. I play I play all the instruments on all the Infinite Singularity recordings.
So I guess when did you start with the guitar?
So guitar was, I think I was 14 when I got my first guitar. I had played in the band and the orchestra when I was a kid, viola, cello, low brass. I learned a little bit of music theory, just enough to get myself in trouble, I guess. And then I decided I wanted a guitar. Finally got a hold of one and sat down, and that's when I decided I was going to quit the band, and I started learning some Alice in Chains songs, and that's kind of where it took off for me.
Let's say you got like the Lane Stanley look right there. So the long hair, the glasses, everything, even the beard too.
He was very influential for me. He really inspired me as a kid getting into music. I think when I think about the first band that I really was drawn to as a teenager, guitar in hand, I think Alice in Chains is definitely them.
If I would, could you? So, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And actually, was grunge like the first sort of genre, and I guess even music style you got into, or did your parents introduce you to some classic and maybe some 50s sort of music?
I would say that the first sort of memorable moment, my dad had a vinyl collection, which I think was greatly influential. The first time I heard Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and how everything kind of flows together. It tells the story. It never feels like it's in a rush. It never feels it never feels pretentious or anything. And all the songs kind of blend seamlessly into one another. And I remember thinking, wow, that's beautiful. I love this. I want to listen to this over and over again. At the same time, the Rolling Stones come to mind as a band that I was exposed to really early on that made a big impression on me. I got into some of the older blues, I think, later on because of the Rolling Stones and listening to them. So in many ways, trying to grapple with sort of that gritty, powerful sort of rock and roll sound alongside that really atmospheric, ethereal sound, and kind of trying to bring those together was something that I always wanted to do as I went along.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I was going to say the next thing on Texas' list would have been Pantera. So I wasn't sure if that kind of came a little later, but
yeah, I grew up in Arlington actually. One of the places I lived was about 4 miles away from where Dimebag Darrell lived as a kid. So yeah, I was right there in the middle of all of that. I like Pantera. It's funny, I actually listen to them a lot more now that I don't live in Texas because they were so everywhere back in the day. I don't know that I've really got into grunge though. Alice in Chains I think was more an exception than a rule for me. I listened to more sort of the goth rock industrial kind of end of things. I liked Marilyn Manson a lot, and Nine Inch Nails. Typo Negative definitely comes to mind.
it's funny we mentioned Typo Negative because I recently got into them, and now that we're in like Christmas season, unfortunately, the song "Christmas Morning" starts to seep in a little bit there too. So
yeah, that song hits pretty hard too this time of year. Definitely.
it does, yeah. And May Pierce Steel, rest in peace. And actually, believe it or not, I had interviewed somebody. He's actually in his own little group called Vertical Exit. He actually met Peter Steele.
Oh, yeah?
Got up close. Yeah. Shook his hand and everything. And actually, I think he was just playing pool with some of his other friends too. That very tall guy. So
yeah, 6'8", I think he was.
Something like that.
Yeah, I had a couple of friends who met him or who knew him along the way. Some people I met along the way in music, and spoke pretty highly of him generally.
Yeah. I want to say man a few words, but I think if he could get some sentences going, I think he could actually write a book, to be honest. So, yeah. God bless the man, though, too. He went too soon. So,
yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So, let's get into your little project here Infinite Singularity. So, yeah. I got started at the beginning right here, up until 2012. And then what made you want to restart it in 2022?
I think there are a lot of things. I felt like I had a little bit of stability as far as my life. But at the same time, some things happened that really challenged me, that were difficult, that I struggle with a lot. Um, I mean, my dog passed away in early January 2023. And of course, I live up here. I moved away from everybody, and I think the project's always kind of been born out of isolation and out of sort of struggling with existential questions of meaning and purpose. And I feel like this has just been a moment in my life when I've had the opportunity, the space to be able to return to that, but also the incentive or the motivation to do that.
Man, we're almost turning into Nietzsche here before you know it. So
I think I've read everything he's ever written. I don't know. I don't know that he's my favorite philosopher or anything, but he's definitely thought provoking.
that's what you know they're good philosophers do. They make you think. So,
Yeah.
so I guess how'd you come up with a name there too? Because it's almost like a fancy science term. They're gonna think you're big into astronomy or something.
It is, yeah, in many ways I did come up with the name because of physics, because of philosophy. I was really interested in some of those fields. Singularity is mathematically an infinitely small point, basically. And there's this idea that everything came from that's what the Big Bang was, that the whole universe eventually, or if you go far enough back, was essentially a singularity. Some argue that there are singularities inside of black holes, for example, too. And I think just kind of grappling with the paradox and with the vastness and sometimes the apparent indifference of the universe is really what inspired me to take on this project and to kind of try to build something separate from myself that was so Infinite Singularity as a project. I wanted to do something that wasn't about building a brand or an image, that wasn't about public appearance so much. I think of the Alan Parsons Project in some ways when I think of the initial goals, that it was something that wasn't about touring, and it wasn't about sort of the rock and roll thing. It was about telling a story and being able to create something meaningful external to the artists themselves.
So I guess your lyrics, they tend to delve into some of those philosophy topics like Nietzsche writes, or I guess do you try to mix it up every now and again? Maybe it's a character story. It's almost a short story whenever you think about it too. Is it kind of along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, I've always cringed a little bit at the idea of being called prog and this project being called prog, but I do love concept albums. I don't know why I have a negative impression of prog. I listen to prog rock and stuff. I think it's growing up in the 90s when there was kind of a reaction to all of that big, symphonic kind of stuff that but yeah, every album is essentially a concept, a story, something that's external to me, that's not autobiographical, and that kind of gets at some of those questions of meaning, some of those big philosophical questions.
Mm. Yeah, I could see. Actually, I was talking with some people who were in the prog rock scene. There was Kevin Dotson, there was Michael Lewis, older guys, but they grew up there at a time when prog, it was almost like a little secret society, for instance, there too. So whenever you want to like get some new music from like Jethro Tull, for instance, or Genesis, it seemed like you had to get it like in a brown paper bag. They were thinking you're carrying drugs or something. So,
both
it's
very good.
interesting. So I guess how would you describe your music? I mean, would you say it's a blend of like a little bit of prog?
It's funny. I've never sat down, and this isn't the only project I've ever been a part of, but when I write music, I've never sat down and thought, I want to make this kind of music or I want to make that kind of music. I had kind of a vague idea of what I wanted to do, bringing the atmosphere and the grittiness together, but I don't really know what I'd call Infinite Singularity if push comes to shove. I mean, some people have called some of the new stuff more post-punk or black gaze or some of these sort of sub-genres that have come out of extreme music or underground music over the years. But I don't honestly know what I'd call Infinite Singularity. And I think about all the work I've done. I was a singer-songwriter, did acoustic music at one time. I was in a band back in Texas for a while, more of a hard rock band, but I think with some melody, maybe along the lines of the Foo Fighters, I think we kind of aimed for that to some degree. And yeah, I played acoustic music. I played in honky tonks. I played country music and blues and all kinds of stuff over the years. So I don't know that I've ever sat down and said, this is the kind of music I want, and then that's what happened.
I mean, everyone wants to put a name to something, so I can do that.
Yeah. I do think I've leaned more into the sort of post-punk and goth kind of elements with the new album. I it's funny when I think about grittiness plus atmosphere. Some of the old goth bands like Bauhaus or Joy Division come to mind, and I fell in love with them, but I didn't hear them while they were really around and while they were big. I listened to them many years later. It was something I kind of got into later on. So I think one of the struggles for me too, coming back, is trying to figure out how to uh, play something that feels authentic that's solo. Some of the old albums, there was never a sense of I'm going to perform this live or anybody's ever going to see me play this all together, because it would be impossible. And I don't want to hire a band, and I don't want to do all that other stuff. But some of the new stuff, I thought, okay, I'll make it more simple. I'll be more minimalistic. I'll kind of strip it down to its essentials. And so I've been using loops and drum machines a little bit more, and just playing the keys and the guitar together so that I can actually pick it up and play it all together by myself. I don't know if I'll ever get out and actually gig. There's not really anywhere around here I can gig unless I want to serenade the wild animals again. But it feels good to pick it up and to be able to do something that is sort of encapsulated that way, and it has that kind of authenticity, I guess.
So serenade a whole herd right there. They'll think you're doing an exodus before you know it. So
Yeah, I think I chased them away just like when I was a little kid.
that's our deal. Yeah. So I guess, was it COVID that really kind of brought you back into this project in 2022? I guess, or how bad was COVID for you?
So, COVID, I've to this day never tested positive for COVID. I long had a phobia of germs, of disease. In general, I had nightmares about plagues wiping people out, which is probably a weird thing for a kid to have nightmares about. But when COVID hit, I was exceedingly cautious, probably more cautious than I needed to be. I went and got the shot right away when I was able to, and it never really affected the art. In many ways, I had given up. Essentially, I thought I was going to give up on music in 2019. I had recorded Postscript, which is this 18-minute instrumental, and I thought this was going to be the last thing I ever did, and that I was going to be done after that. And yeah, sitting at home during COVID, I started picking up my acoustic guitar and playing again. And yeah, I don't think Infinite Singularity would have come back without COVID. And I feel in many ways like the whole experience was really beneficial to me. I benefited a lot living through that era, but there's a lot of tragedy. I feel a little guilty having benefited, given friends and family who passed away. I know I'm not alone in having lost people during the pandemic, but I do think this project itself would not have come back, and maybe I never would have picked up a guitar again if it weren't for COVID.
So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise there too. So
For me, I suppose so. Yeah.
well, you haven't been the only one, because I know in some of the other interviews there have been people who've like taken up projects like starting a YouTube channel, or actually doing what you were doing in a way. They formed their own little band or music project or whatever it was. So that much was good. That and nap time was pretty good. So
Yeah.
I guess in your neck of the woods, I know you said there's not much, I guess, bars and venues. So I guess, do you have to go to Fargo or make your way like to St. Paul and Minneapolis to play any sort of shows, or let alone see any shows?
Um, I think Fargo's a good bet. I'd say Duluth is a pretty good bet too. But yeah, as far as big cities where there's really a scene, I think I think Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Winnipeg would be the closest to me.
We'll see how crazy the winters get, because I'm thinking that there's always some bad winds blowing down.
Yeah, we've already seen 20 below a couple times up here this year.
Big old devil. So, yeah. But you say you never got sick with COVID. I guess, I don't know. I had friends and family that you hung out with that got sick, so wasn't sure. So good to see you. You're doing well there, mate. So
Yeah, yeah. I lost a few people, unfortunately. But it's funny, since COVID, I can't remember a time when I ever got seriously ill since before 2019.
mm,
I guess hiding in my house as much as I did might have done me good for a while there.
I think our next project idea should be called the Hermit. Do it that way. So say that they think you went away to be a monk or somewhere. So
Yeah, I mean, maybe that comes a little too naturally to me. I always kind of liked solitude, and as I've gotten older and had the opportunity to do it, I decided to kind of lean into it.
I think you find out that whenever humanity throws a lot of stupidity in the world, I think you tend to want to be more introverted then. So
Yeah,
when you think about it. So
yeah.
I guess are you more social when you go to maybe like a social event, maybe say a birthday party, for instance?
I don't go out much. Um, I I guess I've made a couple of friends since I've been up here, but I really do kind of spend most of my time alone. I spend a lot of my time just walking around in the woods up here, thinking, exploring, kind of getting off the beaten path as much as I can.
I turn one of those nature sort of meditation sermon would be like, I am one with nature. Nature is one with me. So open my third eye. So yeah.
I think up here too, nature reminds you that it's not always friendly. Certainly when it's 20 below zero outside, it reminds you. But we have animals in the woods up here that are actually dangerous, and you gotta be careful. We have mountain lions and black bears and critters that remind you that you're not always at the top of the food chain when you're out there walking.
We quote the Wizard of Oz sort of moment right there. Lions, tigers, and bears. So,
Oh my!
oh my. We need to bitch slap that mountain lion right there. And then he starts cowering. So actually I've never been to Minnesota, to be honest there. I only landed like keeping in Minneapolis and St. Paul are one big metropolis, right?
Basically, yeah, and it's really spread out.
Right. I was trying to remember there too, because I do remember we came into St. Paul's airport because we were going up to Canada there for one of our trips. So
Yeah.
I was trying to remember. Just maybe that part right there too. But the other thing you got, the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
You know what? There's actually a moment in, I don't know how much you are into like metal, particularly Viking metal that came out of the Scandinavia region, but there's a song from Amon Amarth, Put Your Back into the Oar. And in the beginning of the song, you're just hearing the row. So yeah. And I think they've done it in their music videos. Everyone gets down on the ground and they just start doing like this to simulate like they're rowing oars. So
That sounds cool. I've only listened to a little bit of Amon Amarth, honestly. I did listen to a lot of the black metal stuff coming out of the Scandinavian countries back in the 90s. I think there was a moment when I was young when I just wanted to chase down. I heard Slayer's Rain in Blood, and I wanted to chase down. Let me find the most evil, extreme music that I can possibly find. And then I discovered, oh, this is, it has keyboards to it. It has some aesthetics and some atmosphere to it too. I kind of like this.
I would say that explains the lighting and the sort of winter scenes on your pictures and album covers too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do genuinely. I love winter, but sometimes I think I'll grow out of that if I live here long enough. Growing up in Texas, you don't really get winter. You don't really get snow. And yeah, it's when I post these pictures online of snow-covered trees. Yeah, maybe that looks kind of metal, but I also have this sort of childlike sense of wonder attached to that because I grew up in a place that almost never snowed for most of my life.
I want to say, did you do Snow Angels when you first saw winter up here in Minneapolis or in Minnesota?
I lived in Kansas City for a while before I moved up here, and yeah, I have to be completely honest with you. At the first time there was enough snow on the ground, I did some Snow Angels.
And after that, it was snowball fight.
Oh, yeah. There's a sort of magic to it when it's not something you're used to, when it's not something you've experienced a lot of.
Happiness comes in many forms. So yeah.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
It feels at home. I mean, I feel at home up here now in a lot of ways. But yeah, the longer I live here, I meet people up here who complain about the snow and hate it, and it's a mess, and you have to dig your car out of it. And why does anybody want to live in this kind of environment? So I still enjoy it. The magic hasn't worn off, and maybe it won't.
So the next thing we do, build an igloo. So that's what we got to do next. So. Actually, for some reason, I think they actually put a little fire on the inside. It was like one of those Facebook posts I was seeing, and I guess instead of like the whole thing falling down on you, it's like it keeps it warm on the inside, but the outside temperature, because it's so low, it freezes the outside. So works out in the end. So be a funny idea.
Yeah, the kids do it up here. They'll dig holes in the snow and go hang out in it because there's enough snow you can basically build little igloos up here, and people do that. Most of the time you see people out on the lake ice fishing in the winter too. Lake Bemidji is pretty close to me, and it becomes like a little city out there. I haven't gone ice fishing yet. I'll have to do that at some point, I think.
Just bring your nice little lawn chair out right to the middle, like right there.
Yeah.
Oh, you almost had it. You got to be quicker than that. So. I don't know. Hey. Like I said, humanity's strange at times. There are some things that make you smile there too. There are things you're like,
yeah,
that deal. So, but going back to COVID, in all seriousness, good to see you are doing well there, Maine. But I don't know if you've been to any shows recently, but I guess how has the music scene been from your perspective, from any of the neighboring towns and cities you perhaps visited?
You know, I haven't been to a show, and I haven't been to a show since before COVID. And even before COVID, it was a few and far between experience. I don't think I've never been to a show in Minnesota in the time I've lived here. I went to a couple of shows down when I lived in Kansas City. For me, music was something I pursued it in earnest pretty seriously for several years there back in the 2000s. I even ran a live music venue for a while in Fort Worth back when I was younger, and yeah, that all kind of fell apart in 2012 because I made some bad choices, put it that way, and I think in some ways it's just been hard for me to get back out there and get back into music. Partly, crowds are uncomfortable. Crowds are probably more uncomfortable after COVID, and there are all those sort of poignant memories attached to going to live shows from back in the day because I spent so much time living in that world.
I'd say there has been good people coming out to like shows because I've recently now made a habit of mine now for trying to at least get to concerts, maybe like 3. I think this year in 2025 I'm going to try to get to 6. So, and I'm from the Pittsburgh region, so let's say we get some outdoor ones because the one that's called Stage AE, I actually saw Megadeth, Mudvayne, and All That Remains play, and that was pretty killer.
Awesome.
So I just have to see what happens. So
I've seen Mudvayne live several times. They were a big draw for me back in the day. I'd get tickets about every time they came through town. Had to go see them.
It was back in the day when they had the makeup and the bullet holes in their head.
Yeah. They were still doing that. The last time I saw them was on the tour promoting the new game, which I guess was their last tour up until they came back around recently and started playing again. Yeah,
actually, the recent tour they were doing with Megadeth, they actually started doing a whole lot of their older stuff from mainly like the LD50, The End of All Things to Come. There was a couple from there, and then a couple from Lost and Found, mainly like Falling to Sleep and Actually, I might have just been Falling to Sleep. I was thinking they did Forget to Remember, but no, they didn't do that one. So
I really like that song.
And then Dull Boy. No work and no play makes me a dull boy. So
I think that's probably my favorite album by them, Lost and Found. I really enjoyed that one.
Really?
Yeah.
I would find out. I could see why people would love LD50, maybe because of how dynamic it was.
It was something different. I mean, I know they get kind of lumped in with new metal. I don't think there's anything wrong with new metal. I think there's a lot of great music that came out of that scene. But yeah, that really stood out to me as something different, something very atmospheric and really boundary pushing at the time.
I think there was a lot of emotion when it came to the new metal. Whenever you think of some of the Slipknot, Korn, and Mudvayne back in their very, very first, or maybe even their first couple albums too.
Oh yeah.
Even like when they were just screaming to you, I was saying, at the end. I was like, oh my God, I can't hold it out anymore. So yeah.
I still Deftones are probably one of my favorite bands, and I know Deftones would say we're not really a new metal band, we're not totally a new metal band. I remember discovering them back in the Adrenaline days, their first album, and going, wow, this is amazing. And yeah, it was about the emotion, how much feeling they were able to bring forward with everything they did.
Oh, Engine Number 9, whenever they closed it out. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, believe it or not, I did see them live. They were with Gojira and this other band called Vows. They were the headliner. That's right. I was going to say the middle, but that was Gojira. So, and they closed Engine Number 9. I was actually getting ready to leave. I'm like, boy, I'm spent. I can't do this anymore. And
They're making me want to suck it up and go to a show again, or maybe several. I think there's going to be a point when I've been playing for a couple of years, and it's there's something just so inspiring about seeing a band in person, seeing a band live, and I think I'm going to have to get over my hermit days and go see a live show up here somewhere.
be like, oh my God, that's Lukas the Hermit. So yeah. It would be nice, but hey, might as well go out. As they say, you only live once. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So all right. So moving in here, I actually forgot to ask about your influences here too, because I think you've brought up a couple here with Lane Stanley from like Alice in Chains, and I know you said Deftones, but I guess who would you say has really been like a big influence in terms of your playing?
I mean, yeah, when I think of who inspired me to pick up guitar first, I think, I think of Alice in Chains, I think of Jerry Cantrell, think of learning, I remember learning riffs from their first album, Facelift. The Real Thing was the first song I learned to play on guitar. Probably gives you an idea of where my head was at back in the day when I was first playing. Um, yeah, I learned a lot of Slayer. I picked up a lot of Slayer when I was younger, as far as guitar playing goes. There are some more thrashy, and more sort of black and death metal kind of bands that I've liked as well. I love At the Gates, that sort of Swedish melodeath sound that's really picked up on them. Their new stuff is amazing too. I've really enjoyed all the stuff they've done over the years. Just getting into more extreme music is Sean from Emperor, who really, another sort of boundary pushing artist who, when he went out on his own especially, it's just some of the stuff he did with the guitar just amazed me. I can't play it, but sitting down listening to it and really figuring out how that kind of came together. I think those are really kind of the elements for me. I drew on Alice in Chains. It has that more bluesy and sometimes grungy or sludgy kind of feel, but I wanted to infuse that with more of the darker, more sort of minor key sound that I got out of thrash metal and black metal and some of those styles as I went along. I still listen to a lot of that music, but as I went along, I kind of branched out. Again, I think you get the sort of 7-year itch when you play music. You get to where you want to do something else after a few dozen songs of one kind. I went out and did acoustic stuff, and it's probably hard to picture me playing, Friends in Low Places on a bar stool or something like that. But that was a time for me for a while too, getting into folk and country. Growing up in Texas, being surrounded by sort of the outlaw scene too, Hank Williams 1, 2, and 3, Merle Haggard, David Allan Coe. I'd say too, there's these bits that I picked up. I love ZZ Top, another band from Texas, of course. I just really love the way their music comes together. Everybody in the band is sort of at 11. They're all, the things they're pulling off are just the way they come together. The chemistry is amazing. So as far as who I really listening to now, what I'm really listening to now, I think I end up going back to, broadly speaking, some of those genres. Some days I'll listen to country music. Some days I'll listen to black metal. Some days I even listen to hip hop or EDM or who knows. I like to mix it up because I love music. It's always interesting to hear and to experience something new that way.
I would say if you were still digging around for evil music in terms of like what the black metal was, I would say Burzum and maybe Old Mayhem whenever you think about it. So I say
Yeah.
Burzum because that was with Varg. I can't pronounce his last Varg V just for a short term because
Oh, jeez.
he killed his own bandmate. And I mean, you see it too. He's smiling at the camera right there, though, too. I mean, you know that's pretty fucked up. So
Yeah, you know, I think there's part of me when I was young and first discovered Scandinavian black metal that thought, I don't know that any of that was ever exciting to me, but I do think it gives us sort of a pathological allure to some extent. I think the black metal scene has certainly developed in some ways that court a certain kind of controversy, and um, that gets uncomfortable because then you ask yourself, do I want to support an artist that is about this or that does that? Um, yeah, Presume comes to mind as one. Do I want to? I'm not saying don't listen to bands because they've the people who started them did controversial things or terrible things even, but I kind of struggle with that, separating artist from art with some of that these days.
yeah, that's why. I would say Behemoth was perhaps another big influence in terms of the black metal scene there too. I'd say theirs are a lot more lively. So
Yeah, I've seen Behemoth live. I like their work. I don't know if they're one of my go-tos to some degree. I think about you mentioned guitar style and guitar sound. I think of Abbott from Immortal, who went out on his own, of course. The tuning and the way that he sort of works his distortion, the way he sets up his distortion, always kind of admired that because it gives it that sort of icy feel, but it still has that kind of snarl to it. I really like that. I think we use the same tuning. I don't know for sure. I haven't sat down and played one of their songs in a while, but
that's interesting. I don't know, I always see like some posts that are always poking fun at Apith for some reason. I don't know if it's because of some funny facial expression he's doing. He's like something like that. I don't know. So
I think that's something I like about him too. That he's not somebody who constantly takes himself overly seriously. That there's always, I think there should be a little bit of weirdness, a little bit of tongue in cheek in art, especially when it becomes really dark and when it becomes really foreboding. And I think it's one of the things I always loved about Typo Negative, how they had those moments that were extremely tongue in cheek that kind of broke the tension once in a while.
I mean, hey, if you got a song that's talking about making love to the dead, I mean, it's Black #1. So yeah.
Oh man, 11-minute song about hair dye. Yeah, you got it.
Was that what it was? Was that what it was all about?
Yeah, Black #1. It's
I had no idea.
flat black hair dye that's so popular with goths, especially. And I'd be lying if I said my hair was never Black #1. It was for many years. So yeah, that's. But yeah, stuff like that. That's a little more tongue in cheek. That you can get at the pain, you can get at the dark side of life, but also trying to sort of transform it into something that's uplifting and that's entertaining. Even I've always admired that.
We call that black comedy afterwards. So
Certainly.
all right. So good choices there nonetheless. So I guess let's go and jump into the gear right here too. So I guess what do you use for making your drum sounds? And I guess what's our mic? And I guess tell us about your keyboard and guitar there.
So there's been a lot of transition over the years, but also surprisingly little this guitar. It's an old Yamaha guitar. I bought it at a store called Mars Music that hasn't been in business in over 20 years. And they used to be a national chain. And I bought this guitar for probably $120 in like 2001. Um, and I put new pickups on it and rewired it, but it's still the same neck and the same feel. And I like the feel of the guitar. I like the pickup setup a lot. Um, It'll give me my two humbuckers and my one single coil. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, honestly. That way I can, I think you can make the clean tones more jazzy when you want to, and you can keep the sort of heavy distortion sound as well. And they both kind of work with this guitar. This keyboard, same thing. Bought it in 2001. It was an old MIDI unit they sold at Radio Shack. It was like the last one they had left, and I picked it up. And I've been playing it for 23 years now. Drums, I used to have a drum set, a full drum set, 2 kick drums, 5 toms, 10 cymbals, just a humongous, ridiculous drum set. As I moved around the country several times, I had to kind of downsize and ended up selling it off piece by piece. For a long time, I was using pads because I lived in an apartment, and it just wasn't practical to have a drum kit. I still have a kit. I still plug it in. I still use it for sampling once in a while, but it's very minimal. I've kind of moved away from the big drum sound and toward a more minimalistic sound. I use like a kick, a snare, a hi-hat, a ride, and a couple of crashes, and that's basically it since 2022, since I put together Monsters back in 2018, 2019. Hallowed is the first time, and all the singles that kind of came out of the new work, is the first time that I used a drum machine. And I think about, I got my Spotify Wrapped back in 2023, and they said my favorite artist was 9 Inch Nails in 2023. And I thought, why didn't I ever try to use a drum machine before? I apparently like the sound. So that was the first time I sat down and really started playing with sort of MIDI-style drum machines. I run a very basic one out of my laptop. So I'm talking to you on one laptop. I've got this laptop. I think I have 4 of them. That happens to us, right? So very minimal as far as cost, very minimal as far as equipment. As far as guitar sound goes, I have an old pedal board, and I've spent so many hours programming this thing. I'm terrified that one day it's going to break, and I'm going to have to go buy a big pile of individual pedals to ever get the sound back that I've developed over the years from this pedal board. Getting just the right amount of distortion and reverb and delay and chorus and all of those elements, just the way I want them on guitar, has been an ongoing project. I'm not much of a gearhead, though. I've never been one to chase down a bunch of new equipment. I kind of find what works and stick with it and try to hone my craft through the stuff I've already got. Partly, I think that's a financial decision, too. I've never had very much money, so I got to be picky about what I use, and I got to build the sound around the things that are available and accessible.
I'm going to say when the pedal board goes, it's going to be one of those climactic moments, be like, no. So. I worry that day will come. I do. And there are moments when I go to a guitar store and I pick up an old Gibson or something and play it and think, I'd love to own one of these, but I don't want to pay $1,200 for it. I guess the next thing we'll do is try to do a Frankenstein sort of experiment right there. Try to reassemble together and then use a bolt of lightning to kickstart the life again.
I did that once. I had a friend in one of my old bands. He was a guitarist and a bassist, and he was an electrical engineer, and he actually did put this pedal board back together because I did break it once, and I was so freaked out about it. Like, give me, I'll take a look at it. He actually got it to work again, so... Yeah, the gear I'm using now it's old. I kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I see myself replacing it as it kind of gives out on me, but I'm generally pretty happy with the sound that's coming out of it. And this is something that happened. I know I bought a new laptop while we've been talking to each other over the last few months. my mixing console broke down. So originally I had a Korg D8, which was one of the earliest digital recording units you could buy, a standalone recording unit. I bought that thing in 2000, I think. And I went to a party. I came home after this long bender, and I decided I was going to record music, and ended up wrecking the thing, which was stupid because it was over $1,000, and I didn't have $1,000. Lesson learned when you're young and foolish. I had this AW1600, so a Yamaha separate sort of recording unit. I bought that in 2006, and I ran that thing. Everything you hear from Infinite Singularity, all the stuff that's out there, except the first two albums, was recorded on that. And it finally gave up the ghost over the summer. It finally passed away on me. So I got new music recorded and scheduled through July 2026. And after that, I have gone the route of the semi-professional, and I bought this new highly capable laptop, and now I use Pro Tools, and I've started recording songs with Pro Tools, and I really like it, and I see myself becoming a Pro Tools fan. Hopefully I won't become a gearhead and have to buy a million plugins like I know the temptation always is, but everything I do after July 26th will be recorded in Pro Tools, and I'm really liking the way it's sounding so far. So
I'm gonna say if it's another plugin, we'll have to see if Kerry King's got a plugin that you can try to use to make that Slayer sound. So
I have to. That's one of my big complaints about Pro Tools is when you record in 32-bit float, it's really hard to get that snarl out of your guitar. It almost smooths out too many of the rough edges on the guitar sound, and I really don't like that. I'm still playing with how to get around that. It's almost like you need the guitar to be at the risk of clipping, otherwise it doesn't sound right.
that explains a lot. So I guess there's always a pro and a con when it comes to like getting any sort of DAWs, though. I roll with Logic, which has always been a big help.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't really delve into the big things, so I was always like, I have no idea what the hell you're just talking about. So, but I know what you mean by in terms of clipping, and then like trying to get that rough sort of edge, so that way it makes it sound like you're strumming, and the fans are not saying like, "Oh, you're cheating." That's not a real guitar. So, I can say what.
I haven't played with Logic much. I might have to sit down because I know one of the downsides of Pro Tools is they kind of own you once you have Pro Tools, because everything you subscribe to you don't actually get to buy outright, and you have to constantly pay for subscription fees. And I feel like I get nickeled and dimed to death in too many other arenas in my life already. So
It's like that scene in Disney's Hercules with Hades just tells Meg that I own you. So
yeah, I feel like Pro Tools owns us.
along those lines. So, all right, I'll lay it up to you, but I would say if you do have a Mac computer, Logic's really the way to go. It's pretty cheap. So yeah, I never had any complaints. You're able to make some noises there too. I'm trying to figure out what other plugins. So I know I had Captain Chords, which I got to use that a little bit more. That was just kind of making the chords for me, so I wouldn't have to worry about doing the strumming or the piano tapping and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but great gear there nonetheless.
It's something I might have to take a look at. I have worked in professional studios, so I've played with Pro Tools in the past, and there's some familiarity coming into it. I think another DAW, I'd have to go through sort of the learning curve of it, but I also, I've got music pretty much done until mid 26, so I have time to dial it in and to get it right and make sure it's what I want. Which is nice, and to make sure I'm not spending a bunch of money I don't need to spend.
That too. Actually, are you still doing stuff in music production? Is that one of your main jobs, and this is like the secondary job?
I've only ever done music production for money on and off. It hasn't been a big part of my income for the most part, and I think music's always kind of been that way for me. I've never consistently made a living off of music, but I've done enough gig work in various capacities that I make a little money here and there. Or I did in the past, back when I actually, left my house. No, I don't work in music anymore. I just Infinite Singularity is something I picked up on, and I kind of want to see where it goes over the next couple of years or so. And I don't know if music will ever be a career for me again, but I think it'd be interesting to see what I can do with this project.
All right, we'll see where it goes. But I guess jumping ahead here in terms of challenges, I guess normally I thought working multiple jobs was one, but it seems like yours is like maybe a little bit there, but it seems like you got your whole schedule under control. But I guess what challenges do you face these days as a pretty much a solo musician in this case?
Well, some of the things I find myself obsessing over are probably kind of petty, um, like how long a song is. I find myself unduly obsessed with how long the songs are and how long the song comes out to be. And I think that started with the first album. I sat down, I wrote the songs, I recorded the songs, and I discovered all the songs are over 10 minutes long the way I first want them. And thinking about sort of editing and thinking about where do I want this to go? Where do I want this to be? Does this hook hit the right way? Is this too long? Is this too short? Does this have the right feel? Some of those anxieties I think come down to, is anybody going to want to hear this after I'm done with it? Because I know my music taste is weird, and is this actually something people are going to want to get into? And does that even matter if I'm not trying to do this for a living anyway? I think a lot of that comes back to something maybe a lot of artists struggle with, and that's, trying to kind of keep yourself, trying to keep your own authenticity, trying to make sure everything you do is in good faith, and that you're not selling out, that you're not giving away the best parts of yourself because there's some external motivation that you have to do that. I learned that the hard way. I wonder how many artists end up having to learn that the hard way. Learning to make music that other people like instead of music that you feel, and what that looks like, and then deciding, is this too self-indulgent? Isn't art supposed to be self-indulgent? These sort of big questions that I think we ask ourselves. But for me, not only some of those elements as far as the writing process, but I think we really struggle as independent artists now because so much of what we do is completely dependent on essentially a handful of opaque algorithms. The Spotify algorithm, the Facebook algorithm, the Blue Sky or X or whatever else, the YouTube algorithm. So much of what we do is completely dependent on how a bunch of things work that are completely, we have no access to that information. All we can really do is kind of brute force it, try something and see if it works, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and if it does work, try to figure out why it worked and how it worked. And then you kind of become obsessed with feeding the algorithm instead of creating art. And I think that's dangerous. We live in a world where the cost of entry musically is probably lower than it's ever been before. It's easier. It's easier than it's ever been to make music. I mean, like I said, I can buy a professional grade recording studio and stick it on a decent laptop, and I'm good to go. Stuff that would have cost $100,000 30 years ago or 40 years ago is now accessible to a musician living in a shed in the woods. But at the same time, the hard part is there's so many ways that you can kind of give up a piece of yourself in the process. And what I learned the hard way was you often don't know how far you've gone until it's too late. You're surrounded by people who don't really know you, and it's not anything negative about them. It's the fact that you gave up every part of yourself to do something everybody else likes instead of what you wanted. And it's just a really lonely, really crappy place to be. So getting back into this and asking myself, how do I keep myself from going that direction again? I'm older. I've made a lot of stupid decisions and learned the hard way. Hopefully, some wisdom has come out of that, and I won't have to repeat past mistakes. Maybe I can even help other people to avoid some of those mistakes and not have to learn them the hard way themselves. Um, but I think that's an ongoing struggle as far as being an artist, as far as creating anything, trying to negotiate where you end and where the rest of the world begins. And that world includes people and algorithms and all kinds of things now. So.
Looks like you're thinking what every other musician is thinking of, to be honest. So, but I guess would you also tie it in with the advice going into like the next question here for like the musicians on? I'm assuming you're on the Band Together group on Facebook, right?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I think I've learned about creating, and I wish I could go back in time and shake myself and say, why didn't you figure this out sooner? Patience. Be patient. It's the hardest thing to learn. I see people give up a lot. I see people give up regularly. This isn't going anywhere. I think I saw a statistic the other day from a fairly, I think it was Disc Makers, one of the CD publishing companies, talking about how half of independent musicians give up after 3 years. The people who make all the music that I like listening to, I think about, that come to mind, only a very small fraction of those people have the opportunity to sort of make it big in a short period of time. The vast majority of musicians, it takes 10, 15, 20 years to really get a project off the ground. And I sometimes wonder where I'd be now if I had learned that sense of patience and, be single-minded, be strategic, but think long term. It's not happening today, it's not happening tomorrow, but that doesn't mean, you're not going to get where you want to be eventually if you keep going. I think that comes from something deeper, though, and this maybe is something else I learned from falling on my face. Gratitude. Being grateful for what does happen, being grateful for what can happen, and having the opportunity to try, having the opportunity to give it another shot. And I don't know, being grateful just for waking up on this side of the dirt for another day. And again, maybe that's something you learn from having a couple of really bad days. But I think musicians, if I could pass on anything I've learned from playing music and being involved in music for close to 25 years, I think that's what I'd say.
Got to throw the Three Stooges sort of slapstick moment there in terms of like shaking the opponent.
Oh, I know. You realize what you did 10, 15, 20 years ago, and why did you do that?
I mean, I know you're not going to shake the guy. I mean, there's going to be some sort of physical contact if they make a time machine at one point or another. So I would have been like, why did you start this podcast right in 2020? So that would be. All right.
Yeah, maybe we all have those, right?
Well, you should have started earlier. So yeah. All right. But thank you so much for sharing the advice right there too. And I did forget to ask this too. In terms of your songwriting process, have you always done it where you make the music first and throw the lyrics and everything on last? Or have you sometimes done vice versa?
I think that's changed a lot over the years. I was a poet before as a musician. So I'd say the first two albums I did, the lyrics were mostly written before any of the music happened. And then it became sort of the basic singer-songwriter approach where I pick up a guitar and I try to figure out what kind of music fits with the lyrics. And then slowly everything else kind of took off around the vocals and the guitar. Now when I write music, it's rather different from that, I would say. Partly that's because I had the experience of being a hired gun playing in other bands. and seeing how they put things together, and also sort of occupying that space on stage. When you've been a singer-guitarist, you think like a singer-guitarist, and then when you get a gig as a drummer, you get to see what it's like to be in a band from a very different angle. Putting that together, now it's really, I hear the music sort of in my head in many ways, which probably sounds a little crazy. I feel like there's sort of a four-piece band in my head that I can kind of visualize what this is going to sound like and what each part is going to kind of look like. And the lyrics, rather than coming first and driving the music comes together. The tiebreaker ends up being like the bass guitar. It gives me a sense of whether this is the right length and this is the right sound and the right feel. And then the lyrics kind of come at the end now, which I think is probably more typical.
Normally, yes. I can see why. So, as I was going to say, he's not turning to Nietzsche now, is he? In terms of being a poet, and then all of a sudden jump into music. So, I don't know about that, but I mean, I don't really know how much in terms of he lived, though, too. I think everyone will tell you the famous quote, "God is dead," was pretty much what he was idolized for. So,
yeah.
And we killed him. So,
what a quote. Yeah, I think that quote gets misconstrued a lot of times too, because I don't think he literally meant God is dead because he said so. I think he meant there was a certain idea of God that came out of Enlightenment philosophy that became hard to believe in the late 19th century for a variety of reasons. And I don't even know if I buy that to that degree, but that's certainly. He has these pithy sort of aphorisms that I think when I was a teenager and I first discovered them kind of resonated with me, and maybe because they were edgy and maybe because they were provocative. But as I kind of unpacked them, I went, well, that's not really what he means, is it?
That's why you know you're learning something when you're actually looking a little deeper into the saying. So yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was more along the lines of God is dead and we killed him, or kind of like the actions we've done in terms of the atrocities and even what the powerful and the elite were doing. So it causes the poor and sometimes the middle to kind of turn away from God in a certain way, man. In a certain way of thinking about it too. So
yeah. And I think in many ways too, he's talking about the history of philosophy from like Socrates to when he's writing. So he's argued that sort of there's a current in Western civilization and philosophy that undermines itself. That kind of God was supposed to be this sort of central element in Christendom, and in many ways the philosophical work that was done to justify that belief in some ways undermined it. I think of Twilight of the Idols is the book where I think he describes that the most thoroughly in many ways.
Yeah, brilliant man there too. So, though I think at times he was a little depressing. I don't know if he was very social. I don't know. So, like Carl Jung. So,
I think he lived in a shed in the woods too. No, he lived on the mountainside in the Alps. He had a shack in the Alps, and he used to spend his time up there. And a lot of times he wouldn't use the heater. He would let his fingers freeze and all kinds of weird things to have this like total experience, to endure as much pain as possible because it influenced him and it made him sort of think about his mortality and things like that. I don't go outside and make myself freeze on purpose. That seems not fun to me. But
I mean, if you were put into a dare situation where you're jumping into what you say that lake was that's close by to you?
Lake Bemidji is one of the closest lakes to me.
Just jump into it and jump up, be like, "Oh my God, this is so cold." So yeah.
Oh yeah, and people do it up here, and I think it is one of those sort of experiences. There is something to be said for that. That suddenly you find yourself having a good time or being comfortable in an environment where the people around you are suffering. And you realize something's changed about me. Something's happened to me over the years, and the things I've experienced that have changed me as a person. That's made me more. I almost hate this word, resilient in a way.
You thank the man upstairs for that. So, but thanks so much for sharing that stuff there too. And it's always good to get a little philosophy lesson there too, because I will tell you this: I only took one class for my philosophy class, and I went to logic next and got a C in that. So
Logic was a tough one. I did get a degree in philosophy when I was a young man. I never became a professional philosopher, but it was something I was really passionate about when I was young.
if it's Singularity, the philosopher. So.
You could probably see how those two things kind of come out. Funny enough, when I rebooted this project, I thought about changing the name. And what I found very quickly was there's so much music out there and so many projects out there. I couldn't find anything compelling that I liked more that somebody else hadn't already used. I thought, well, this is a distinctive name, and it has some recognition maybe from the past, so I'll go ahead and stick with it.
Good choice. So, so look, we basically questions here pretty good. So here, let's jump into the fun ones. Ready?
Say again?
Oh, sorry. Did I break up?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. We basically questions here pretty good. So here, let's jump into the fun ones. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start here with the first one. I'm actually curious if there's any sort of famous food up in Minnesota. So I guess what is currently your favorite food?
My favorite food. So I think about Minnesota. Something I really acquired a taste for up here is walleye. Walleye is delicious. The fish, grilled, fried, whatever. I don't think I've ever had any kind of fish before that I liked as much as I like walleye. It's almost buttery. It's so, the texture is so smooth and rich. It's delicious. It's a wonderful food. And up here they pull it right out of the lake. A lot of the lakes up here have a lot of walleye native to them. So though I guess I'm kind of a boring guy when it comes to food. If you ask me what my favorite food was in general, I'd say I'd love to go to the East Coast and just buy a slice of cheese pizza from one of those little pizza stands again.
I'm telling you, the pizza was replacing what the drugs were in the 70s and 80s. Now everyone wants pizza instead. So,
yeah, every time I go to the East Coast, I live off of pizza slices pretty much. That's just mostly New York. I've spent a good amount of time in New York City, and yeah, always Philly to some extent too. You can always get good pizza.
that's for sure. So there's a good amount of pizza joints around my neck of the woods here too. So I would say we got some competition to kind of do next. So.
Oh yeah.
Right. Great choices there, nonetheless. And for the next one, what would you say is currently your favorite movie? And if you have a favorite TV series, go ahead.
Well, you'll probably chuckle about this one. So right now I'm binge watching Star Trek Voyager. I've always been a Trekkie. I love Star Trek. And I haven't actually watched this series all the way through. I kind of got bored with it back when it was on TV 20 years ago. So I figured I'd sit down and watch it all the way through. I was always a Next Generation fan when I was young, and then I, got into Deep Space Nine later. As far as movies, I don't know. For some reason, I've been watching a lot of war movies lately. I've always had kind of a morbid fascination with violence. Not that I want to commit it or perpetrate it or be anywhere near it, but trying to understand why people do it. And so I've been making it through Saving Private Ryan lately. I forgot how star-studded that cast was, and how many people in that movie went on to do great things as far as actors. Fury is a good movie too. It's a movie about a tank unit. I think Brad Pitt is the lead in that one. That's a good one. Classic Full Metal Jacket, of course. I watched that pretty recently. I like a lot of the sort of surreal science fiction that's been produced by the Wachowskis over the years too. The Matrix trilogy, of course, is big. The fourth movie, I wasn't sure I loved the fourth movie, but it was interesting, and I want to give it another go at some point. V for Vendetta is awesome. I think my favorite movie is by them is probably Cloud Atlas, though. That's a brilliant movie. It's kind of multiple stories, past, present, and future, all kind of being told at the same time. It has such a profoundly sort of human message that comes out of it. It's a 3 hour movie. I think it's kind of hard to get into, but I really like that one. It really stands out to me.
I'm gonna say that explains the existential side, at least, in terms of watching the war movies.
Yeah.
Especially Full Metal Jacket, I would say. It was pretty good there, too. Man, I can say why Stanley Kubrick was a pretty good director for making those sorts of movies. So, even though I think he was kind of a dick to some of the actors and actresses, whenever you think about it.
Oh yeah, he made some people's lives a living hell trying to capture that artistic vision.
I was like, wrong again. Oh, no deal. So, there. Great choices there, too. I would say also Saved by Ryan. I mean, they made the battle scenes look pretty damn good for like the beginning there and also the ending battle. So
yeah, very, very visceral, very powerful.
that's for sure. All right, great choices. I don't know if you drink any alcohol, but if you do, what would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink, and then what's your favorite non-alcoholic drink?
So I guess I'll start. My non-alcoholic beverages of choice. I'm actually drinking peppermint tea right now. And I drink a lot of coffee, but I'm not much of a day walker. I'm kind of a night person, so coffee is a morning thing if I actually have to get up and move around, which is almost every day. I work and have a lot of stuff to do like everybody does. So coffee or tea usually are my big choices as far as non-alcoholic beverages. Tea is afternoon and night. Coffee is in the morning. Alcohol, I would say I drink beer. I kind of stay away from the hard stuff. It has a tendency to get one in trouble, I think. Though I do like gin sometimes when I'm on vacation. I I like more hop forward beers, but I really have a taste for, instead of drinking to get drunk, I have a taste for brewery tourism. I like going to a new brewery and sampling some new alcoholic beverages I've never tried before, just to have the experience of seeing what they taste like. I like the taste of beer, and I think it's really interesting, the complexity and the variety, especially nowadays. Everybody has a brewery in Minnesota too. If a town has more than 500 people in it, it probably has a brewery up here. So it's nice to go. It's nice to go travel around, visit, get to sample different kind of beers. I don't have as much time to do that as I'd like. But yeah, coffee, tea, and water, I'd say are my pretty standard drinks on a fairly regular basis, which is maybe not that exciting.
It's like, man, if you're a vampire at night, you just end up drinking a little coffee there too. If you get all jittery, everything, be like, okay, that whole deal. So
yeah, I learned a long time ago not to drink coffee during interviews because I'll get a little bit too wired. Tea is good.
Yeah,
Keeps your throat relaxed, and it's beer. I used to drink beer during interviews, but I found that has its own side effects too. So
yeah, we said some things we probably shouldn't have did on a live camera. So yeah. Lesson learned there. Have you done numerous interviews, I guess, before jumping on this one?
I don't do this very often, especially anymore. But over the course of my life, I've had to talk to a lot of people in a lot of spaces. So yeah, I've learned some lessons that way too, as far as being interviewed in various capacities.
Were you on Boxing Sticks when they did their little podcast? Have you been on that yet?
I have not. I'm familiar with it. I've seen a bit of it, but I haven't actually been on it myself.
All right, I'll have to make that happen sooner or later. But at least I can say, I got you, Christina. So yeah.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, and
in a fun way.
I think Vox and Sticks does a lot of great stuff for the indie music community too. Really appreciate them.
I think she stresses herself out maybe a little too much than she probably should be doing. So,
well, that's always the danger of passion, I guess, that you'll spread yourself too thin. But I think we all see it, and I think it's greatly appreciated too.
That's for sure. So keep up the good work, Christina and Greg. So we love you all. All right.
Yeah.
And for the last of the fun questions right here, tell us what your favorite song is. Is there one in the mainstream world, and then maybe one from the independent community?
Yeah. So I would say there's a song called Little Dark Age by MGMT that I discovered kind of accidentally. And I've become like obsessed with this song. I've listened to it a bunch of times now. I have this tendency to do this with songs. Some songs just grab me, and feel like I have to listen to them over and over again. And that's really kind of an electronic-y, very post-rock kind of song, but it's awesome. I just keep listening to it, and I can't seem to stop listening to it right now. And once in a while, songs just hit me that way. So I'll probably be tired of it in a month or two, and I'll move on to another song I'm obsessed with. There's some indies that really stand out to me. I've listened to a lot. There's a band called Hollow Words out of Germany. There's a song called I Prefer Gold that I really like. I've been listening to a lot. Black Marine, I believe, is out of Austria. Yeah. The Dead Man Walk is a really good one. I like that one a lot. She's done some really good work lately too, that I've been picking up on. And there's a band called Nevin that I just discovered. They submitted a song to me. I do a lot of playlist work in the community, and they have a song called High Water that's really quite beautiful that I've listened to several times now. I think about a lot of different artists in the community who I've known for a long time, or have been around for a while. I think of After the Morning, for example. They've been around for quite a while. They're actually one of the first artists I started talking to again when I started getting involved in music, and they've got some good tunes. Our Transgressions, I think their first single is one of the ones that really kind of stood out to me too, that I've listened to many times. It's honestly hard to pick people out in that sense, because there are so many talented artists in the community, and I've made, I think, 118 Spotify playlists now for various members of the community, and I almost feel like calling individual people out is unfair to the number of people who are making really good music or really talented that I've had a chance to listen to over the last couple of years. But those are a few that are current obsessions. I'm sure I'll have new current obsessions a couple months from now.
These are just a few of my favorite things. So yeah, actually, yeah, Black Marine. I actually interviewed her not too long ago. She wasn't living in Austria, but she was originally from Serbia. So, so Maria Vesic. Yeah, I mean, that's how you pronounce her name. I want to make sure I'm able to get the pronunciation right. So
yeah,
and Jesse's his name from after the morning.
Yeah, so. Jesse. Okay, you've talked to a couple of these people. Yeah.
Yeah. I still get emails from him. He sends like either his music or some of the bands he's either worked with, or I guess even produced with too. So
very cool.
Cool guy. So major support to all of them too. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So Lucas, we briefed all the questions here pretty good. We are down to one more question in my podcast. Before we jump into it, would you like to ask me any questions, or maybe say any final words before we jump into it?
I think I'd just start by saying I've really enjoyed being a part of this community, and I appreciate you, Brian, for taking the time to do this and bearing with me while I deal with my technology and scheduling issues lately, which I hope to have resolved to some degree, though those things go. Just the thing I love about music, and something that I carry with me from all the experiences I've had, is the number of people in different places at different times that I've had the opportunity to interact with, and artists that I've had the chance to listen to, and just people you get to know along the way. And which it sounds weird coming from kind of a hermit, but I think that the human factor is one of the great things about music. And I guess a little bit of advice to never let that kind of pass you by as it goes along.
At least he's honest when he admits that he's a hermit. So, all right. But if there's nothing else here, here's how the last question goes. So, given what COVID's done, I know you talked about losing some friends and family, which I think had more emotional and mental toll on you. And I'm sorry to hear that too. So hopefully you're doing better now. But for those musicians and people who are perhaps going through something similar, or perhaps are dealing with anything else like an addiction, what sort of message of hope would you give to those people so that they can try to move forward with their lives?
You know, there are times in my life when I didn't think I was going to make it. And I think in some ways I'm fortunate because maybe some of those times I shouldn't have made it. All other things being equal, as they say. I think no matter what happens to you, no matter where you are, sometimes the best thing you can do is focus on the net experience, the whole experience of living, of being alive, and see that this dark place you might find yourself in is temporary, and that however you get through this place, and you must get through this place because that's the only way that you get to experience whatever else is waiting for you on the other side. When nothing else seems worthwhile, the best thing to do is to remember that there's going to be things to stick around for later, and you don't even know what those things are, and you'll never get to find out if you don't make it through this. And yeah, some of the worst places I've been, just trying to remember that I have a life, and I don't know how long that life will be and how guaranteed that life will be. But I know that if I can't make it through this difficult time, I won't get to see all the other things that are going to be around for me next.
Sorry, thought you were still going there. But nonetheless, spoke like a true prodigy and a philosopher. So,
thanks.
No worries. Well, we have to talk about Nietzsche a little bit, so I figured we had to throw in also a philosophy, then a prodigy too. So, all right. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sharing there too, Lucas. It does really mean a lot.
Of course, Brian. Yeah. Again, getting through some of that. I don't know that I don't know if I struggle with things at a level that other people I've met along the way have. But yeah, that's something I've learned over the course of my life. And again, I write a lot of sad, dark stuff, but I don't do that because I want people to feel sad. I make music to make people miserable, right? Nobody does that. Hopefully nobody does that. It's easy to convey pain and sorrow because pain and sorrow are part of life, and we all have to deal with them to varying degrees. But trying to get something meaningful, or trying to draw attention to some meaningful possibility out of that pain and sorrow, I think is the point.
Yeah, I can understand that too. Well, we could definitely see the typo negative is flowing strong with this one. So yeah, that's good to hear. So thank you so much there, Lucas. All right.
Of course.
So Lucas, we've reached the end of my podcast right here. We're just a little shy of about an hour and 30 minutes, but I guess before we close out, got any final words? Any shouts you want to give before we close?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who has I've ever connected with as an artist, ever talked to, however fleeting. Everybody who's ever sent me a song to put on a playlist that I've had the chance to listen to a few times. Every single human being who's ever taken the time to listen to anything I've done. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. I just really appreciate it. I am endlessly grateful. It means a lot.
Sounds good. And just for the audience sake, can you list what social media and streaming platforms you're on so they can check out your music and interact?
Sure. Probably the most active on Facebook. I have just gotten onto Blue Sky. We'll see how that goes. It's still an open question. I'm on Instagram. I am on all the major streaming platforms. I have a YouTube channel for live recordings and things like that. I also have a topic channel for the music itself. So yeah, you can find Infinite Singularity on all the major streaming platforms. and all the minor streaming platforms. I send it to everybody. In fact, I send it to people who stream it for free. I don't care. I'm just glad people listen to it.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So to close out like this, everyone, my guest today was Lukas, hailing from Minnesota. He's part of his own solo little project right here, Infinite Singularity. So had a nice chat about this and that, especially about philosophy and all that stuff. So go hit this brother up on all the music platforms, all streaming, as well as on the socials right there, so you can talk to him too. Let's go help our brother out there too. So actually, it's a little early right now for saying Christmas, but Merry Christmas nonetheless there, Lukas. So you stay safe. Rock on. Stay tuned, y'all.
Merry Christmas, Brian. Thanks a lot.
No worries.